Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Monday evening show. And I hope this finds you all well wherever you are. And just a few things before we kick off with our very special guest this evening, and that is to just remind you that we're going live again on Wednesday night with a lady who our guest may even know, a lady called Melissa Kumi, who we're going to talk on Wednesday about the Public Health Act and the tyranny that they are trying to still get away. You know, they haven't given up after the 2021 COVID tyranny stuff. So you can hopefully enjoy that then. We have a budget coming up on Wednesday when Rachel Reeves will proceed to rob the country blind and tell us that she's doing it to make it more prosperous. I will be appearing on a different show tomorrow night, so you can catch me. I'll send you the details tomorrow. I'll put that out. So look, that's it. In the meantime, again, I have to say I'm loving all the Trump stuff. Is there anyone out there who doesn't think he's going to actually win? No, I'm convinced. I'm 100% in the Trump camp, by the way. I watched his rally in Madison Square Garden with it's amazing, absolutely amazing stuff. But you've probably heard sufficient podcasts on that from me anyway. I just see some of the people joining. I want to say hello to all of them, especially on the YouTubes. I don't normally put stuff out on YouTube because they punish me that much. Get beaten up by YouTube all the time. So I kind of said, the hell with YouTube. But on this occasion, because it's not my YouTube channel, it's our special guest channel. I'm happy to see you all. Thanks for coming along and for joining us. So look, without further ado, he's been sitting very patiently in the background, and I want to bring on someone who a lot of you will know. But anyway, can I bring into the studio Mr. Richard Inman? Richard, good evening.
Evening, David. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good. I know we are literally not that far from each other.
Well, you know, I was just going to say that, David. We could have actually done this in person. Maybe we should do that on one of the podcasts. I'll come down to yours. You come up to my gaff, and we'll actually, because I think it's really nice seeing people actually sitting together and things. So we always do these split screen things, but we're so close. We'll maybe do that one day, David. If you want me to come back, that is after tonight.
Well, Richard, that's a very good point you make, actually, because in fact, I mean, I think the last time we actually met was back in July the 25th, where I actually did put on a live event with a number of people in London. And the reason I've been doing that, Richard, is just the point you make. I get so sick of the way they were trying to keep human beings apart from each other in 2020, 2021, that I thought to myself, the hell with it. Let's see if we can find ways to bring people out. Now, obviously, I mean, that was just in my small way. I was doing that back in July, but it speaks to your point. I think people like to come together, don't you think? And you know,
and do you know what, David? That was a great event actually, because there was a lot of really lively debate there, and you wouldn't have got that if it was people in a chat room on the internet. Well, maybe you would have got that. I don't know, but I mean, it's a lot better when you're up close and personal having a lively debate than when you're doing it sort of virtually, you know.
I agree, and you know, I now think back to that event, and I can think of one particular lady who is ex-forces actually, who was at that event, who was very, very much in the reform camp, And I've got huge respect for her, by the way, and she's a lovely lady. But you know, she was stridently, you know, like, we've got to get behind reform. And well, we're going to talk about that as well, Richard.
That's something, you know. Yeah, exactly. We'll definitely talk about that, because that's an interesting.
No, a couple of things to be said from the get-go here. First of all, a lot of people, because of, you know, as we've been highlighting the fact you'd be coming on, Richard, a lot of people have said to me they wanted me to express their appreciation to you specifically for all the work I know you've been doing in the background, the work that you did back in July when I was there, and the work that happened at the weekend as well. And you know, I can tell you your work is really appreciated, Richard. So just be aware of that.
Well, you know what, David? That means a massive amount, because you know look, there's all sorts of things happens in the run up to an event, and you know, all sorts of unforeseen things, and it's a lot lot of pressure, a lot of stress, and obviously we're all volunteers, David. We're not getting a penny for what we do. So and I don't mind that. But the point is to get that appreciation really makes it worth it. And I tell you what makes it worth it. Actually seeing how it all panned out on Saturday, because boy, we were under a little bit of pressure on Saturday.
Well, you were, but let me bring it back though to July because obviously I was able to be at the July one, the Tommy Robinson event in July in Trafalgar Square, and I honestly can tell you it was an absolutely, for me it was and for the tens of thousands that were there, it was a really great day. You guys organized it so well, good mood, good feeling, good vibe. A sea of patriotism in the heart of London, which is you don't often see, Richard. It has to be said, not often you see that. So that was. I came away from that day in July thinking, like, this is what's best of British.
Yeah,
people, all skin colors, all ethnicities, all creeds and colors, or we're all there. That's why I get so annoyed when people talk about extreme, and we're going to talk about that, extreme right wing and all that. But you couldn't have had a better day out in London, I have to say, So big shout out to you.
Oh, well, I think the thing is, there's a lot of, it's not just me involved in that. There's a lot of people. There's, some of them don't want to be named. I'm not going to name the ones that don't want to be named. But the stewards do a fantastic job. The security do a fantastic job. Tommy does a fantastic job. Tommy's totally in charge of the platform and who comes and speaks and so on and so forth. Yep. I am involved with police liaison, organising some of the sort of not organising the PA system, let's say saying, okay, where's it going to go? It'll go here, it'll go there, and talking to those guys about that. There's another guy books all that stuff. So it's a team effort, David. It's not, it's not just me but like even the small part of the jigsaw that I'm involved in, dealing with the police is like a hostage negotiation. Except the police are the hostage takers, right? So you've got to use a lot of psychology on them, and you got to give and take, and and you've got to be tough with them, and you've got to know when to back off and know when to sort of put the pressure on. And they're playing the same game with us. But to be fair to them, right? On the whole, I think there are certain things that they do which I'm going, I think I saw what you did there, and I don't really like it. But on the whole, we've built up a relationship of mutual respect. I think they respect Tommy and what he does, and we've got a respect for them because they have honoured what they've done to a very large extent. There's been a couple of things that I haven't been happy with, and I'm very vocal about them when they happen. But on the whole, we've kept these events magnificently peaceful, and that's all about dialogue. And it is like a hostage negotiation. It's all about dialogue. It's about communication, and communicating within our team, communicating with them, communicating, with other stakeholders in London. So it's quite a complicated thing. And of course, a lot of these stakeholders are left leaning. And we've had some fun. We had some fun with the manager of Trafalgar Square. He was fun to deal with, and that's all I'm going to say on that one. I don't think you'll ever forget that day.
Yeah, but the thing is that particular weekend in July was such a surreal one for me because we had my thing on the Friday, then your thing with Tommy on the Saturday, but then it all then things seemed to go really weird because then on the Saturday night, Sunday morning, Tommy was obviously he was arrested and taken away. And then there was the protests outside of Downing Street. And again, I'm conscious there's people that I know that are watching this, that they then went there. And I know you were in the midst of that as well.
I called it. I called it. Yeah. Tommy got arrested. And I'm going to, there was a few people in our circle that didn't want anything to do with it, but then took credit for it. I'm not going to say any more than that. But there's, that's a bit of office politics. But the reality is, I said, look, we have to do it. We have to do a demo, and we have to do it now. We can't wait. We have to do it right now. We have to get on the street, and and the only because when Tommy got arrested, people were saying, Richard, what if you go to the airport and get arrested? I said, no, I'm not going to go to the airport and get arrested. I'm going to go to Downing Street. So if they're going to arrest me, they can arrest me at Downing Street, where that clown lives that's causing us all these problems. So we went to Downing Street, and by the time I got there was about 200 people there already, and you know, we'd no amplification for speaking or anything, you know, and the police were like, again, it was a hostage negotiation. The police were trying to move us on, and it got to the stage where the police were basically begging us to because they knew, because the problem is I know the law and I know what you're allowed to do in a static demo, and as long as you're not totally blocking the road, you can pretty much crack on and do what you want. They can't really do too much about it. And first of all, they said, well, Richard, you're blocking the gates. And I went, well, there's nobody coming in. It's Sunday night, the Prime Minister's not here, and the gates are bolted. So and you've got barriers in front of the gates. So that's not an issue. You're blocking the road. It says, no, we're in one lane of the road. That's perfectly fine. We've got some stewards there and some security. We'll keep that lane open for you. And then the cop eventually said, but the tourists, they can't see Downing Street because of you guys. And I said, well, what's the problem? He says, well, they've got to cross the road to see Downing Street. They've got to go across the road. I says, officer, I'm sure these tourists were taught the Green Cross Code when they were children. It's not a safety issue. At that point, he gave up. He gave up and just said, do whatever you're going to do. You know what I mean?
Right,
But it was humid. It was, you know, you don't go in there with a mind to aggravate them. You don't go in there aggressively. It was good humored. I was saying, look, you know, give and take. We you know, and it was Tommy was in prison. The cop says to me, how long are you going to stay here? I says, we're going to stay here till Tommy gets released. You know, and it's because I just said it dead. I just dead. We're going to stay here till he comes out, and then we'll go. And the cop just looked at me and says, you serious? I says, oh yeah.
but the thing though, as that particular night wore on, I think the police were, from what I can gather from other people that were there, there was a bit of aggression, you know, going on. But then, Richard, where it all really sort of spun off was that the next day, I think that if I get the chronology right, was when the 3 young girls were slaughtered by an alleged second generation Rwandan, or as the media called him, Cardiff man, in Southport, you know, and so this is where the whole, it all went strange. So with terrible murders, people, all those patriots that had been in Trafalgar Square on the Saturday were faced with this reality only 48 hours later, that Tommy Robinson was in prison, was in custody, and then these girls had been killed, and then the protests kicked off. I mean, what was your take on those? Because I call them protests. I don't call them riots.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I mean, my reaction was this: when that happened, we still don't know what motivated that man to do what he did. And that's what I'm the overall out of all this, I'm very interested in why that man did it. So that's a question that I want to put out there. We must never forget that. And when that court case comes up, I'd be very surprised if there's not a religious motivation behind those killings.
Likewise.
That's all I'm going to say. Right now, we'll see. I could be wrong, but let's see what happens when the court case happens, and let's see how the British public react to that if that's the case. But though they were protests, right, and everybody. Because look, we've had Ariana Grande, we've had Borough Market, we've had the Bestland School massacre, we've had October the 7th, right? Yep. So when that happened, it wasn't beyond the realms of possibility that what I'm describing at Bestland and on October the 7th is what happened in that incident. Now we don't know, but that was the conclusion that everybody jumped to straight away, right? And obviously there was a little bit of fake news came out and all that. Just on Tommy. Now, obviously, Tommy had been released the Sunday night when we did the protest. He was released on that Sunday night. Now, whether our protest had anything to do with that, I genuinely don't know. But the Met were worried because they saw that crowd gathered. Literally in 2 hours, we had probably 400 people there. We called it 2 hours later, there's 400 people on the street. And the Met were, and the people kept coming. So the Met were worried. Did it have anything to do with him being released? I don't know. Anyway, Tommy was released. And he got off to where he was going, right? Across out of the country. And very wise. Very wise.
I agree. Yeah.
Because if he'd have been in the country when those riots had started, he would have probably been in prison well before now. Right? Yeah, that's a fact. So when that happened, the protests were called. And here's the thing. especially the one in Downing Street, right? From what I could see from that one in Downing Street, there was a little bit of pushing and shoving at one point. Nothing major, nothing more than that's happened at a lot of other demonstrations when they're spontaneous and the police don't know how to react and the protesters don't know how to react. So there was a bit of pushing and shoving, no major violence at all. There was somebody who did something stupid, like threw something over the gates into Downing Street. I thought that was really dumb because he could have got himself shot. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's get it right. But there wasn't a massive. Most people at that event on the Wednesday night were massively peaceful. Now there had been serious rioting, I think, on the Tuesday night, if I remember, in Stockport. I think it was rioting on Tuesday.
It was the day
after. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, or maybe it's Thursday. The chronology is a bit hazy now. But anyway, the Downing Street event was largely peaceful, and the police literally locked everyone up in that area in Whitehall and just plucked people out of the crowd. And many of those people are now in jail doing serious prison sentences. I think of the train driver. I think his name David Spring, was it David Spring or David Springer? But the train driver that was 61 years old, caring for his wife, got 2.5 years behind the door. And an Islamist lawyer, an Islamist lawyer, I'll not mention his name, said, well, maybe he'll learn to respect Islam while he's in prison for 2 years. And that was obviously a threat. Yeah, so that's the sort of stuff that was going on.
Keir Starmer's on the phone there. One to have a word.
Keir, I'm not talking to you, not tonight.
But Richard, that's where it really went dark then, because probably millions of Brits, I watched the persecution of so many of those people who at the very many of them had done stupid, stuff like posting a spicy meme in Facebook. I mean, who hasn't done that? I know I have.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, listen. I mean, the reality is, right. There's times when we've been in very, very heated demonstrations where I've shouted at the police and I've been angry with the police. Right now, that is now violent disorder, and people are getting 2.5 years for that. That is terrifying. That is absolutely terrifying. The stuff that we've done in the last 7 years, that if they'd have been done during the riots, I would be doing 2.5 years in prison, right? Not because I've committed anything, but not because I don't believe those guys. I believe that this is one of the biggest mass miscarriages of justice in British history, without a shadow of a doubt. And those people that are behind the door now, I don't know if you've seen Tommy's documentary, absolutely superb, by the way. Those people that are behind the door are political prisoners. And we need to remember, in the same way we're going to remember Tommy, we need to remember these guys as well, because I think a lot of them are in very, very serious and imminent danger. I think probably more danger than Tommy is, because obviously Tommy's so high profile. So we've got to really, really realize what is actually happening in the country here. No,
I completely agree. I think in August and September, in those couple of months, we saw this like jackboot stamping down, particularly, Richard, on what I would broadly defined as like working class patriotic people. The length and breadth of England in particular, we had a sort of a small wee bit of it in Northern Ireland, but not really very much. But there's no doubt about it. I believe that was driven from the top. I think the incredible speed of justice. People arrested one day, in court the next day, and off to prison the next day for a couple of years. I don't think we've ever seen that before.
No, we haven't. And can I say, the incredible speed of injustice, not justice, the incredible speed of injustice.
Right. You're right.
Fast justice is no justice, isn't it? So the reality is that what's happened in this country, and my goodness, David, show trials. It was literally like being in communist Russia or China. I was waiting for I think what they're going to do, start taking people out and executing them. And now we've had our first martyr to the cause.
Well, we'll move on to.
So getting back to the riots. I mean, you were talking about protests. What I did, David, a lot of people kind of backed off making videos and doing stuff because they were rightly scared. There was a protest in Bangor, and it was totally legitimate. It was a static protest, and then it moved down. It just spontaneously started moving down the road, and we all kind of moved down the road. And I was told I was going to be arrested for that protest, and like for a few weeks I was thinking, why? I haven't broken it. yeah, I walked down the road. I wasn't leading the thing. You know, at the end of the day, I just walked. You know, and that's what I was told at the time. So I was on edge, but I thought, you know what? If I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out with a bang. So I just kept doing videos and kept telling people to go and protest. But my thing was, go and do protests because it's legal. It's your God-given right to peacefully protest. It's protected by the European Convention on Human Rights. It's protected by the United Nations Convention on Human Rights. So you have a legitimate reason to go and protest peacefully. If you riot, then you're stupid. You're going to get arrested and you're going to go to prison. And listen, rioters that go to prison, I've no sympathy for them whatsoever. But people who have got boisterous in a situation where there's violence going on, those people should not be in prison. And the police need to be able to discriminate between people who are carrying out criminal behavior and violent behavior and people who are a little bit boisterous and a little bit mouthy. There's a massive difference. And do you know what I think it was, David? I think Starmer wanted big numbers in prison, so they grabbed everyone and they fast tracked them through the legal system. And I think, yeah.
Well, they did, but at the same time, and this is the bit that is really annoying, they then opened the prison gates so that people who had committed serious enough crime to be given a custodial sentence, they were let out. So this is where I think it's gone so dark. We've seen these convicted felons being set free, 50% of whom will, I think, a big number of whom have reoffended anyway, which is laughable. But they didn't even care about that. They wanted to bring those people that were agitated about the killing of 3 young girls. They wanted some of them in prison to send a lesson. And I think that's what it was about, Richard. It was to send a lesson to all of us, basically, watch your step. Exactly. And that was, and that was for me the message of August and September, which
absolutely,
I mean, I don't recall a time in our UK where that's happened before.
And I had discussions with Tommy about this because obviously, Tommy knew if he came back, he would almost certainly be arrested in prison, and it put him under a massive amount of psychological pressure, as you can imagine. Because Tommy's been open about this. Tommy suffers from PTSD as a result of his experiences in prison, and quite understandably, even just been locked up. Prison is a massively traumatic event. Now, I haven't been in a civilian prison, but I was in the army, Nick, for a few days when I was a young soldier. So it's not nice when that key turns in the lock and you realize you have no control over your life anymore. It's not a nice situation. Anyway, put that aside. The reality is that Tommy was under massive psychological pressure, and I was in touch and I was saying, look, I really think we need to do a demo, or not a demo, an event. We talked about it, we're going to do it. And obviously his whole thing was, do I come back? Do I not come back? And eventually said, look, we're going to do it. We were planning, I was talking to the police anyway, like we were doing it. So I just kept on going because we decided to do the end of I think we're first going to do middle of October. And then we put it back, obviously, for his court case. He agonized over that, whether he's going to come back and face this. And I wouldn't have blamed him for staying where he was and just said, you know what, you can come and get me whenever you're ready, but I ain't coming back. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I can tell you, loads of people contacted me, Richard, in the past couple of weeks saying, tell him not to come back.
Yeah.
I think
what I said to him, and not that my advice is he's got a lot more important people in his life than me telling him what to do. But all I said to him, I says, Tommy, whatever you do will be the right decision. Whatever you do will be the right decision. That's all I said to him. So it kind of takes the pressure off him then, because if he stays, well, that was the right decision. If he comes back, that was the right decision. And I think coming back was the right decision. But my point was this, David, the police and not the police, actually, let's get it right. The establishment, the British establishment, which is now almost totally taken over by far left extremists. The British establishment wanted to send a message to us that we're going to get you and you won't protest. And my whole idea was, do you know what? We'll protest twice as hard as we did before, and we'll have it twice as peaceful as it was before. And we'll have an event of love and peace and togetherness. And that's exactly what Tommy was thinking. That's exactly what all the rest of the team were thinking. And do you know what? That's exactly what we did.
Which brings us perfectly up until Saturday, because as you say, I think Tommy flew back into the UK. Was it Sunday? On the Sunday? Yeah, and then obviously, talk us through what
Okay,
happened.
well, yeah. So he came back on this Sunday, and he was expecting to get arrested, and he didn't get arrested. He got through the airport. He's doing that with a good mate of mine. They took him to where he was going and where he was staying that night. And he was on the phone with me. He was like, I got through. You know, he was totally gobsmacked by it. You know,
Yeah.
And so that was great. So we thought, well, you know, maybe this ain't going to be as bad as we think it was.
Yeah.
Then I think on Wednesday or Thursday, he was told that he had to go and surrender himself on the terrorism charge. He wouldn't give his PIN code, and they clamped that as a terrorist offence. This is dystopian, David, because you know, at the end of the day, Tommy is not a terrorist. Like if Tommy was a terrorist, I would have nothing to do, and I wouldn't go anywhere. We know what terrorism is about, David, in Northern Ireland, and like you steer well clear. If somebody's active in terrorism, you're not going to get involved in that, right? So basically, they nicked him on a terrorism charge and then demanded he give his phone details up. Quite rightly, because you know I know he had the numbers of survivors from the Rape of Britain documentary series in his phone, because obviously from time to time he keeps in touch with them because basically, you know, he's made films about them, and you know it's the right thing. We just have that contact. So those numbers were in his phone, and quite rightly, he doesn't trust the police, because the police are compromised. So he said, no, I'm not going to give him my deal. So that's why he was arrested, bailed, and then eventually charged with that offence on Friday. And surprise, surprise, they bailed him until Monday morning, when he was going to appear in his. Now we got that news at 3:00 on the 3:30 on the Friday. As you do when you get to London, we'd managed to find our way into a pub somewhere. We're sitting having a pint. I was actually on the phone to the police, giving the police the details of the vehicles, when one of my colleagues said, Richard, he's just been remanded. And I just, you know, I was on the phone to the police liaison. I said, Tommy, and the police liaison was as shocked as I was, and he wasn't putting it on. They genuinely didn't know. So the guys that we were dealing with in the Met did not have a clue that was happening. So it shows there's also, as well as a 2-tier police service for us, there's also 2 tiers in the police. There's this very politicized part of the police that are making these crazy decisions, and then there's the guys that we're dealing with that are quite reasonable, and we actually can deal with, and we're getting through and getting some solutions. So I'm on the phone. So then I'm on the phone to the police for about an hour, saying, look, guys, whatever's happened with Tommy, we have a contingency plan for this. Tommy's given us a speakers list of who he wants to speak. And, you know, it's totally sorted out. They're all invited. They'll all still be coming. The event's still going to be the same. And we will ensure that we will put out video after video. Tommy's already recorded a video calling for calm and making sure that everybody still comes, because what we want is a massive turnout, and everything will be fine. So I spent a long time on the phone to the police saying, from our point of view, nothing changes. And they said, from their point of view, nothing changes. Now, I want to come on to that, because I think certain things did change with the policing, but we'll talk about that in a little while. So that put their minds at rest. There was a couple of people got a little bit emotional about it, and decided not to come to the event. But that's by the by. It is what it is. So we did the event. We planned it meticulously, absolutely meticulously. We knew it was going to be a success. We knew there wasn't going to be any problems with it, and it was a success. And all credit, we got a brand new security team run by Paul Bates. There was the normal security team there. That's I'm not mentioning the guys' names. They might want the names mentioned on the stream, but Paul's quite happy to have his name mentioned. So Paul was running the new security team, which was a crowd security team, which was working in conjunction with the stewards. We had Tommy's normal security team there, and we had the stewards run by Kaz and Tony. Again, they did an absolutely fantastic job. And I mean, I tell you what, I mean, one of the things that looked really, really good was when the crowd reached. I mean, what happened was as well, the crowd on the Saturday. So that's what the Saturday. The crowd reached the form-up point by, I think, about 20 to 11. There weren't.
That's right. Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
So I mean, we were still in Parliament Square, and we people up there, and they're on the radio, like, they're going to close the station. Somebody has to get up here fast.
That's
so
right.
The stewards sprinted up the road, you know, and with the high vis vests on. The police sprinted up after them. They managed to get in front of the crowd. So they got in front of the crowd, linked arms, stopped the crowd surging forward. And a lot of the stewards are women, you know.
Yeah,
and they stood there and they held the ground. And what I needed to do was get the banner and the guys that were going to be behind the banner up to that line. So we got there, I suppose, about 5 minutes, 10 minutes after that. And but if we hadn't got there, that could have been very nasty because the police were starting to face our guys down, right? And so we got there, put the line across. The stewards put the line across the road. I got there about 5-10 minutes later. We got our security guys out there. We cleared anybody that was in front of that stewards line to behind the stewards, and it worked like a dream. It was superb, and we held that line there for about an hour because the problem was the staging wasn't ready because the event wasn't meant to start till 1:30. We weren't meant to actually start walking until 1:00. So we were standing there from about 11:30, like holding that crowd back, and the crowd were good as gold. They stood there, they sung songs, they waved the union flags, they went and got coffee, they went and had a beer. It was just, the atmosphere was absolutely superb. And to be fair to the police, that the police officer that was controlling his men got them to back off and give our guys a bit of space, and it worked brilliantly well. That could have gone very badly wrong on both sides. The police reacted well, our stewards reacted well, our security reacted well, and that was a great start to it. So we made our way down to Parliament Square. I think there was a little incident with some lefties that tried to
the saddles, but
there was nothing. It was like there was nothing to it, and it was I didn't even see it. It was actually ahead of our march, so that was people that had gone ahead of the march. I think there was a bit of a standoff between them and some of our guys, and the police sort of separated them. But it was nothing. It was absolutely nothing. There was nobody arrested, and we got into Parliament Square, and I mean I stopped the march outside the Houses of Parliament, and it was just incredible. So there's a big banner saying two-tier Keir fueled the riots, and a lovely picture of Keir and that absolute numpty from Nick Lowles who thinks he's running the Stasi, the absolute.
Yeah, apparently so, yeah.
Oh, he's coming after all of us. He's going to get all of us. He's got Tommy, he's coming after the rest of us. Good luck, Nick. So anyway, I'm not saying any more about those. But yeah, so we got there, we stood there, we got everybody into Parliament Street, and the whole of Parliament Street and the whole of Parliament Square was filled. Now, numbers wise, I know a lot of people are saying some huge numbers. Personally, I think 60 to 70,000, right? Yeah. Because that area in Parliament Street safely holds about 25 to 30,000. Then you've got Parliament Square itself holds 30,000, and we kind of fill both. So I'm thinking 60 to 70,000. I know a lot of people saying 100,000, 200,000. I don't think it was. But here's the thing: that's still an incredible turnout for an event where the star of the show's in Nick.
He's not even there. Yeah, I've got to say, Richard. I mean, there's been loads of footage of it, but there's one particular drone footage, sort of rising up and looking down. And it looks wow! It really looked amazing. It has to be said.
It was David. It was absolutely spectacular, and obviously none of us had seen that until we saw the drone footage on Sunday. And I was like, get that on the chat. That's at about 250,000 views on my piddling little YouTube channel. I mean, that is superb footage. It looks brilliant. And here's the thing about the event, right? There was such a, I'm not, hard-nosed Northern Ireland people will be sneering at me when I say this, right? But there was such a sense of love at that event. And I mean that even more than there was on the 27th in Trafalgar Square. There was a sense of emotion and love for each other, building a community, love for the country, love for Tommy, love for Peter Lynch. It was just a powerfully emotional, and everybody was hugging each other all day. Everybody was hugging each other. I'm not a big hugger, but I was hugging everybody. It was. I ended up getting a cold, and that's why I don't hug people. But it was absolutely, the atmosphere was electric, but it was electric in a good way. There was no. Do you know what? That could have been an atmosphere where everybody was angry with the police because of what happened to Tommy, or everybody was really wound up. But the way, and I give a lot of credit to this to Liam Tufts, because Liam Tufts is a compere, and if you know Liam Tufts. Liam Tufts is a tough guy, is tough by name, tough by nature. But he's a very, very warm-hearted, loving guy, and he projected that into the audience, and it was, you know, and then of course we've got all the Christian influence there. We've got, you know, Ricky Doolin. We had a pastor
Ricky,
there.
yeah,
you know, so there's a lot of worship going on, and the whole atmosphere was so positive. And it's been very difficult for even Hope Not. I read Hope Not Hate's report on it, right? It was very difficult even for them to slag anything off. You know, it's so, you know, because it was just such an amazingly peaceful, genuine. It was all races, all colors, all religions, everybody just getting on and mixing. Now, yeah, were the far right there? Yes, there was far right people there. We removed them because we don't want them there, right? So there was the genuine far right, the goose-stepping Nazi far right, and they were removed from Parliament Square. So, but you know, and that's, yeah, it was great. It was absolutely superb.
Richard, the one part of it that I thought was incredibly poignant and very meaningful was the 1 minute silence that was held for another political prisoner who was, of course, Peter Lynch. So, I mean, how did that feel when you were standing there and the big, huge crowd went silent?
Well, that was my wife's idea. My wife said to me, she said, "You better do a minute silence for Peter Lynch," and she was absolutely right. So I suggested to the guys, and you know that have been, you know, doing the speak list and all that sort of stuff. We went, yeah, we'll do it. We'll do a 1 minute silence, and you know, Liam came up with the what do you call it, with just stopwatch, so we knew how the timing. But that was such, honestly, David, the emotion of that, you could have heard a pin drop. You know, you could have heard a pin drop, and it was stunning. It was stunning, and I think it was a very, very important moment for the movement, because again, it was showing love to this guy. I mean, I seen the videos of this guy, and you know what? He was just one of us, David.
I know.
That could have been me or you. That could have been me or you in exactly the same position. He's done nothing. He said nothing that me and you haven't said. You know, and it's. I am disgusted that man went to prison, and I'm even more disgusted that he died on his own in prison. You know, it's absolutely it's shocking. It's shocking, and a lot of love was put his way. You know, and then we had a collection for Peter's family, his kids. Yeah. So it was. Do you know what? The whole thing, I think, despite with Tommy not being there, it's still one of the best events that we've ever done. I can't fault it. All the incidents that happened were dealt with very, very quickly in a proper manner. You know, everything, you know, was just superb. And I credit that to the people that came, the people that gave up the Saturday and came, and everybody that went to that. I'm sure they'll bring 10 people with them next time. You know, because it was just
well, yeah. I mean, to be quite honest, I don't think there's anyone else could get crowds of that size so well behaved and so patriotic as Tommy Robinson, and that's why, of course, that's one of the reasons the establishment absolutely hates him, which then brings us, I suppose, logically to then. So Saturday was a great day, and I guess you know, Sunday was a bit of kind of sort of trying to rest after what had happened the day before. But then, of course, we got till today. So. Yeah. Tommy obviously went to court today, and I guess to nobody's surprise, Richard was found to be in contempt. Can I ask you a question? I assume Tommy realized he was in contempt.
Oh yeah, oh absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think Tommy's point was this: yes, there was an injunction, right? But the way he saw the injunction, it was a gagging order, because he knew exactly what had happened. And he's put out a film, you know, explain. I mean, well, here's the thing about the film speaks for itself. We don't have to say what, because the film is covert recordings of people telling the truth. Because when you don't know you're being filmed and somebody talks to you, you haven't really got much motivation to lie. And you haven't got much motivation to lie, especially if that lie is going to be to your detriment. Because obviously a lot of those people have been given gagging orders and they weren't allowed to speak.
Yeah,
so right. And they fessed up to what they'd done. You know, a lot of them are saying, "Oh, I wish I hadn't done it." You know, so you know, the truth. Those people that were talking on those secret recordings were telling the truth. Because why would you lie when you don't know that you've been recorded? So, and this is the problem. And I think, from what I can gather, I spoke to Paul Thorpe. I mean, I wasn't in court, and I haven't read any of the transcripts of the judgment. But I was chatting to Paul Thorpe, and Paul was saying that the judge wasn't actually criticizing the content of the film. The judge's point today in the case was, you have broken the rules and you flouted the law and you've done it deliberately. That was the judge's point. Well, I don't think that's a good excuse, and I'll tell you why. If what was in that film was true, right, and all I'm going to say is what I've seen, it seems to be true, okay? If what is in that film was true, then surely the truth is more important than the technicality of the law. And you would think any legal system worth its salt would say, okay, there's an injunction. He shouldn't have broken it, but let's actually have a look at this in a bit of depth and see if there's any substance to what's in this film. And that's what I find very disturbing, that the technicalities of the law has trumped the truth. And I think that's a very worrying thing for justice and freedom of speech.
I think that's a really interesting area, Richard, you've touched on there, because, I mean, yes, I have sat and watched the documentary, the film, and I would, can I just, by the way, recommend everybody, if you haven't watched it, go and watch it, especially those, I'm not sure that's the right, is that the right link, Richard?
It'll be pinned to the top of Tommy's Twitter page.
Yes, it's at the top of Tommy's Twitter, to the horror of the establishment. But you should watch it, because to me it makes a very strong case. And I also think, I mean, if I can, I don't want to go into too legalese on it, but I know that there's obviously the defamation, which is which the judge today, and I'm sure Paul Thorpe, if he could join us, would be able to confirm. The judge said that the defamation that wasn't the issue. So the repetition of the defamation wasn't an issue. It was simply the fact that Tommy disobeyed what a court had previously determined.
Exactly.
And yet, as a journalist, and this is the point, some people say Tommy's a political prisoner, some people say he's not. But I think he was doing journalism. If you watch the movie, it's impossible to come to any other conclusion. I mean, Silenced is an excellent, and I have to say, Richard, to me, completely compelling, very, very plausible view of what happened. So I think if you watch that, you would sort of say, well, Tommy's done a job. He's done it as a journalist. He's got this information. He's pulled it together, and yet he's behind bars for what, 9 months, whatever. I'm not sure.
Yeah, he's been sentenced 9 months, and I think one of the chilling things, we were talking about Hope Not Hate earlier. Hope Not Hate have now started threatening to go after anyone that's republished the Silence film, and they're named people, people that are in our circle. And, this is very chilling. And this is a supposedly NGO, Hope Not Hate. There's something wrong with this guy. Let's just get it right. There is something wrong with this guy. He has a very unhealthy obsession with Tommy Robinson. And I wonder, does he love Tommy? I just wonder, is Nick Lowles secretly in love with Tommy? And he's frustrated about this because he can never be with Tommy. So what Nick's doing, he's projecting all his hatred and his frustration because he can't be with Tommy into persecuting and putting him to prison. That's what I think the situation could be. I could be wrong, I could be right. There's something wrong with that man. There's something wrong with Nick Lowles. Seriously.
He is a strange guy, because actually he also, I think, put out in one of the Hope Not Hate documentaries the really strange notion that if he went out in the sun, I can't even believe it, he said this, and then he would turn a dark complexion, and the people would mistake him for being an ethnic minority, and he would get bullied. Racism.
I thought, how racist is that? You absolute bigot. That's one of the most racist things I've ever heard in my life. He's scared to get a suntan in case somebody thinks he's from an ethnic minority. When I was a kid, you wanted to get a suntan. People that had browner skin than you, because they never got burned.
So a very, very strange bloke, and as Citizen here says, Gary Lineker. Gary Lineker is another one that also claimed this, but the point about it is that this, I think, and people should watch this documentary because it's kind of a very important work that Tommy's pulled together. And I think that, whether you like Tommy or don't like Tommy, you should watch Silence. Don't be silenced by Hope Not Hate or Nick Lowe, and make your own mind up. I've watched it. I'm pretty clear on what the facts of the matter are. It's certainly, it's very tricky though, Richard, because we live in a system where the contempt of court is something that the judges do take really, really seriously, and I can understand why that is, to be fair. But I would have thought there were circumstances that, let's say, the sentence and even how it came to a conclusion could have been a lot easier. They wanted Tommy stuck away. Let's be honest about this. To diffuse the fact that Tommy and yourself and all the team are able to pull together these brilliant events, which I think do challenge back into the establishment, and that's.
They're terrified. The thing is, here's a thing, David. Right? If we put 70,000 people on the streets, you can times that probably by 100. There's probably 100 people that want to come, but they're scared of losing their jobs. They're scared of losing the status. And that's understandable. I understand people being afraid. I remember when I started in the movement, I sat down in Gatwick Airport after the first demo I did in 2017. I'd spoken pretty much the same place. Weird, exactly the same place we were speaking on Saturday, except I was speaking to 200 people. This time I was speaking to, I don't know, 60, 70,000. Which shows how much progress we've made, David, right? Mm-hmm. But, I remember sitting down in Gatwick Airport and there was a sense of heaviness came upon me. And it was like, Richard, big voice booming in my head, Richard, your life has just changed forever, son. And it was right to have. But, so I understand people not getting involved, and it's not cowardice. Everybody's got a part to play. And I tell you what, actually, David, there's a thing I think there's two things that everybody can do that won't cost them a penny. The first one is register to vote. If you're concerned about the direction of the country, get yourself on the electoral register. That's vitally, vitally important. And the second one is we've produced a document called the Pledge. Go onto the Pledge website, thepledge.org.uk. And if you like what's in that document, sign it. It doesn't cost you anything. You're never going to be asked for money. It's literally making a pledge to British values, Christian values, and everything that's made this country great. So that's two things that people can do that can't go to events, can't go to demonstrations. You maybe watch YouTube and you're thinking, I'd love to get involved, but I'll lose my job, I'll lose my position. Well, that's what you can do. And, so there are things that people can do, David, that can be very, very effective without having to put their head above the parapet like me and you have,
Well, then I wanted to take you back to yesterday morning, Sunday morning TV was quite interesting in the politics side of things. We had two people pop up, two of them. We had Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform, and we had, what's his face, the Conservative guy, tell me who he is.
Robert Jenrick?
Jenrick. And actually, Richard, they both said the same thing. And I find it sickening. They said that we don't have nothing to do with Tommy Robinson and his lot, quote unquote, from Tice, and similarly sort of similar mewling from the Conservative guy. How did you react to that?
Well, I was traveling, right? So I kind of got up and I was a bit fuzzy headed, and my friend took me to the airport, and basically I got home and my wife had paused the TV that morning, and she hadn't watched any TV all day. She'd paused the TV where Richard. Go away, man. Sorry.
Keith Farmers. Maybe that's Richard Tice on the phone, isn't it?
That's Richard Tice. No, it's Robert Jenrick again. You go away. But I'll tell you a story about Robert Jenrick in a minute. But so my wife paused the TV at exactly the point where Tice had said what he'd said, and Paul had been in touch with me. Paul said, "Richard, can you jump on a live?" And he kind of briefly told me what I said. I just literally drove the car up the drive, landed in Belfast, drove the car up the drive. I was knackered. And she pressed play, and I wasn't going to do the live with Paul. She pressed play, and Tice did the usual throw Tommy and his supporters under the bus, which is what these guys have done for years. I don't know why people are shocked at it. We warned them, but so Tice said what he said, and I went, okay, I'm doing the live, and jumped on the live with Paul, and my goodness, has he made a mistake? Richard Tice has made. We'll talk about Jenrick in a minute, but Richard Tice, I think, has single-handedly destroyed reform. And a lot of people are getting very upset about this, but I think the sooner reform is torn asunder and literally destroyed as a party, the better. I genuinely believe that, David.
Well, because the fact of the matter is that, I mean, I saw it back in July, and it was the same on Saturday. So many people in that crowd, all those tens of thousands of people, they're very well inclined, let's put it like that, towards reform. But all they get is treated like lepers by Farage and Tice. Now, I'm not sure all senior people in reform think like that, but Tice definitely does. And I think Farage does as well, which I just find so disappointing.
Well, I mean, it's more than disappointing. It's an absolute betrayal because Paul Thorpe, and Paul said this on a live yesterday, Paul Thorpe had been really enthusiastic about reform. And I said, when all this stuff started with reform, I said, Paul, I'll be honest with you, I've been here with Farage before. We had it in 2018 when Gerard Batten was leader of UKIP. We tried to get Tommy. You were involved, I think.
Remember that?
Yeah. As well, David. You know, Pete McElvenna was involved. We'd done a great job. Lord Pearson. You know, we were really in a position where if that had worked, we would have been challenging all of these parties now without a shadow of a doubt. And Farage, and I've got the video evidence. Farage called Tommy and all of us tattooed skinhead. It was something like this. Tattooed skinhead, knuckle dragging thugs, or something along those lines, right? And called Tommy a thug, and really said, you know what's going to happen? There's going to be a punch. And this was directly before another event that we were doing, a pro-Brexit event, which he should have been supporting. And we had well, I'm not going into details, but anyway, Farage has a track record for doing this, so I wasn't surprised. And Paul had got all these assurances from senior people in reform that if we backed reform in the run into the election, then what would happen is they would pay us back in kind after the election. And boy, have they paid us back in kind, throwing us all under the bus. Now, I think it's a good thing because everybody that wasn't about in 2018 when Farage sank us last time have seen this true colours. And even, let's get it right, what centre-right party in the United Kingdom, considering the demographic problems we have, is going to vote for a party with a chairman called Mohammed Zia Youssef, who's probably going to be the leader? I mean, that's that is a question I just want to put out there to anybody that's watching to go and meditate on and think about what, is that a good idea? But putting all that aside, Farage Farage did this after the riots, deliberately threw Tommy into the bus because he was petrified that he was going to be the one that
he did. That's right. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Actually, I'd forgotten that.
And then so Tice doing that yesterday didn't surprise me, but I think people that weren't awake to what Tice was about, they're horror. I was talking to people today that are reform voters and reform members. Apparently thousands of people have emailed Farage saying, "We want our money back. You're a con man," or words to that effect. That's happened already. Now, when we were on that live stream, there was 90,000 people watching that live stream, and the chat was, "I'm leaving reform, leaving reform, boom, boom, boom." So I think Richard Tice should resign. I think Farage should resign, and my money for a long time has been on Ben Habib, and I would love to see Ben Habib involved in politics.
Well,
involved in a political party.
Just as an FYI, since you mentioned that, my next live event will be in London. It will be at the end of January, and it will feature Mr. Ben Habib.
Is Andrew coming? Is Andrew Bridgen coming, or is it just Ben?
At this point, it's Ben, and it's also another person you would probably know, Baroness Hoey, Kate Hoey.
I don't know her personally, but do you know what? I'm going to try and come to that then, David, if I'm invited.
It's going to be in the same place the last time, but I think there are people in reform, some influential people at any rate, who recognise that we can't. The arrogance of Tice and indeed Farage is very, very, you know, as you say,
they're not, you know, they're not us, David. They're not like us. The reality is they really aren't like us, and we've got to stop kidding ourselves. So I mean, my thoughts are, I'm always invited. That's fantastic. My thoughts are, you know, we've got, if reform isn't the answer, and I think it's becoming clear that it isn't the answer, right? Not in its present form. Now, if you get someone like Ben in, and you get, you know, Bridgen in, and I think there are still some MPs there that are pretty good. There's I forget the guy's name. It's not Anderson. It's not. There's two other MPs that got.
There are no. I'm familiar of some people who actually Farage is kind of batted away. Really weird.
Yes. Well, I mean, I don't think Farage is the real deal. I don't think he's. I call him phony Farage. I don't think he's the real deal. I don't think he's got the country's best interests at heart. And I think as long as he's on the scene, but I think the thing is this, David, the stakes are too high. You know, it's not a game. This isn't a game. This is the future. If we don't sort this out in 5 years, we're finished. We are finished as a country. And you've got children and grandchildren. I've got children and grandchildren. I will do anything legally within, within the democratic process to make sure that we have the solution. In fight, and I don't have any skin in the game. I don't want to be an MP. I'm not interested. But what I'm interested in doing the backroom stuff and getting people together and building something that's gonna be a solution to these problems. And that's where, you know, I've talked about the pledge a bit there, but that's where I think the pledge is so important in all this as well.
Yes, so I will put the link below and want everyone to sign the pledge.
Yeah, please do. Please
just briefly touch on Jenrick. Just briefly.
Okay. Well, let me. I'm aware of time here. I don't know if you can go a bit over, but I'm aware.
We can. Well, don't worry.
Okay, that's cool. As long, I can be here all night, David. You know what I mean? But yeah, Jenrick. Okay, so I didn't see the interview with Jenrick, but I'll tell you what Robert Jenrick did in So when did we start the protests? I think it was middle of 2023. Okay, March 2023. There's a hotel in Bangor, and it's a migrant hotel, and we found out. You know, the Marine Corps used to be a lovely hotel. And the guy that owns it is just laughing at the people of Bangor. And I hope if it ever does go back to being a hotel again, everyone in Bangor boycotts it and it goes bankrupt, you know, because he doesn't care about the people of Bangor, putting people in there. We don't know who they are. They're Afghans, they're Somalis, they're Iraqi, you know, Pakistani. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they've come from. We don't know what their backgrounds are. And there's these people mulling about, you know, the town. And I'm not against the people themselves, because at the end of the day, okay, you know, whatever problems they've got. But the reality is the system is totally screwed up because it's allowing these people to come in. So anyway, we started doing peaceful demonstrations outside the migrant hotels. And what we were focusing on was really the people trafficking aspect of it, and the fact that, you know, that people have been, you know, brought to a country they know nothing about, they don't know anything about the culture. It's just not going to work, right? So you know, with these big banners, we're not racist, we're concerned residents and all that sort of stuff. So we started doing these totally peaceful, and they've been peaceful ever since we've been doing them, peaceful demonstrations outside the migrant hotel. And the media got hold of it. The MP at the time, who thankfully the residents of North Down and the voters in North Down booted him into touch. Right. Mm-hmm. The vile Stephen Farry, disgusting individual. Absolutely disgusting, despicable individual. He got booted into touch by Alex Easton. Great day. But back then, he was the MP. He stood up in the House of Commons and he moaned about what we were doing and said to Jenrick, what are you going to do about these racist protesters outside the hotel in my constituency? And did Jenrick turn around and say, they're not racist, they're concerned people. I believe what they believe. No, he didn't. He said, don't worry about it, Stephen. I'm going to set MI5 and the local police onto them. That's what he said. And the next week, we had the riot squad down, getting all leery, getting in our faces, asking for details. And thankfully, a lot of the lads that go on that demo on a Friday night know what the police in Northern Ireland are like. They know how to deal with them. And the police didn't bother coming back down again because they were made to look pretty silly asking for names and addresses on a peaceful, legal, lawful protest. They can't do that. But they tried it on. And they tried it on because of Robert Jenrick. So whatever Jenrick says, I don't believe him. Because I've seen his track record when he was immigration minister. He had this Damascene conversion to being a right wing.
Oh yeah, noted.
Yeah,
Noted.
He's out Farage, which isn't difficult. He's nearly as right wing as Nick Taccone. This is how right wing Robert Jenrick's become. Ludicrous. Ludicrous. He's a fraud. Farage is a fraud. We need something new, and we need it quick.
So Richard, in the last, we've got a wee bit of time to go, but for the last few moments, I just wanted to bring it to Tommy, bring the whole thing around to Tommy. So obviously, Tommy Robinson is now in Belmarsh, I believe. It's Belmarsh Prison in solitary, which apparently is a concession. So which is a weird way of putting it. That's some concession, isn't it? So in a cell by himself for potentially 9 months or whatever. How do you think Tommy feels? Tell me about the Tommy angle.
Yeah, I spoke to people that have been speaking to Tommy on Saturday and Sunday. He was elated on Saturday by what had happened at the event. He was absolutely delighted. He was just laughing at what had happened. He thought it was great, and that it was such a positive, because I think the thing about what we're doing, it's all positive. It's all based on building a community, building culture, getting people proud of Britain again, not going and getting involved in violence, because that's just going to wreck people's lives, But he's mega encouraged by that. And then he was speaking to Liam Tufts on Sunday, and he said to Liam, look, if I get, the full whack, 4 years, he said, I'll do it, but it's going to be tough. He says, if I get 12 months, if I get 2 years, I'll do 12 months. He says, I can handle that. I can do that. He says, but anything less than that's a bonus. That's what he said to Liam, and Liam agreed. And he got 9 months. Now, look, he shouldn't be in prison. Let's get it right. When the sex offender and paedophile, and we could say it because he's been convicted, Hugh Edwards, the darling of the royal family, the one that did the Queen's funeral, Hugh Edwards, the paedophile BBC newsreader, when he gets a suspended sentence because the judge is worried about how he'll cope with prison, and a man that hasn't committed any violent offence, it's not even a criminal offence, it's a civil offence that there's a criminal sanction with, and yet they take him away from his children. They take him away from his children just before Christmas. They lock him up for a film that when you watch the film, it's quite obvious that the people that are talking in that film are telling the truth. So now telling the truth in the UK is a criminal, well, not a criminal offence. It's an offence that gets you put in prison for what did he get? 18 months? 18 months in prison? He's going to do 9. And in solitary. Now, what people have got to realize, and this is what I want people to do actually, what people have got to realize that Tommy suffers from PTSD because of his prison sentences.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, okay, will he cope? I don't know, because he's got PTSD. It's a mental health condition that's brought on by stress and trauma. So if he's been put in prison for 18 months and he's going to do 9 months, Tommy's a strong guy, and he's resilient, but he's been put in a very, very difficult situation. So what I want everyone to do, and I'm going to be speaking to Alex Easton about this tomorrow, what I want everyone to do is contact their MPs either by phone or by email or by letter, and demand that your local MP writes to the Justice Minister, writes to the Home Office, writes to the Prime Minister. I mean, obviously, when it's your MP, they can do it internally. They can ask a written question to those various positions within the House of Commons, and also write to those people yourself, the Prime Minister, the Home Office, not the Home Office, what they call Yvette Cooper, and the Justice Minister, and write to them and ask them these 2 questions: what measures are you taking to ensure the physical and mental well-being of Stephen Yaxley Lennon while he's incarcerated? And I think if tens of thousands of people send those letters to the government's going to have to listen. The government's going to have to be accountable. Now, I believe Lord Pearson's asking a question in the House of Lords. I don't know whether it's a written question or he's actually doing an oral question. But Lord Pearson's going to be asking a question about this. So those are the things that we can do as citizens that will make a difference. If there's any demonstrations called outside Belmarsh, and you can go to those, go, as long as they're legal and they're done right, you can go to those. So there are things that we can do. But the question about how Tommy will cope, how does anybody cope with that? I remember when I was told I was going to be arrested, I was quite hyper for a couple of weeks, and thankfully nothing came of it. I think the police realised it was a fool's errand because I hadn't committed an offence. But when you get told that, you're hyper vigilant, you're worried, So, and Tommy's had this hanging over him, and I think in a way there'll maybe be some relief that he didn't get the bigger sentence. They'll be thinking, well, okay, it's 9 months. If I was Tommy, I would be thinking, what can I learn in 5 months? What can I, if I'm in that environment, he's in solitary, and as far as I know, last time he was. I mean, this is how ridiculous this is. He was in the same prison cell that Ian Huntley was in, because it's in a cordon that was built for Ian Huntley. So that's where they're putting him in the same regime as a child killer was in. Because let's get it right. Belmarsh has jihadists, it has Islamists, it has people that would want to do him harm. That's what Belmarsh is. It's the most high security prison in the country. So we'll see what happens, David. But it's a very, very unsatisfactory situation, to say the least. And it just shows you we're living in a very, very perverse. People talk about perverting the course of justice and contempt. To me, the powers that be are perverting the course of justice and treating the British people with contempt. That's what I see.
Well, to wrap it up, what I would say, Richard, is that I think yourself and all those around you that have organized these great events, like the one that's just happened on Saturday and the ones before that, I think you should understand that that's appreciated way and beyond maybe the limit, the areas that you even think. And I know from all the stuff that I get and people contact me, that there's huge respect for the work that you do, and of course for Tommy Robinson himself, there's great love. And I felt it back in July, actually, on stage, because you could see it was getting to him at times, and totally understandably. It's terrible when the establishment turns on patriotic people. And as I've said today, Richard, you don't have to like Tommy even. You don't have to. But the things that he talks about, the things that we all talk about, they matter. The future of this country, as you rightly observe, is on the line. And I mean, why is it wrong to talk about the issues like migration, like Islam, like grooming gangs, it's just normal stuff, except the cards in Parliament don't really want to talk about it at all.
Because they know if people talk about it, that they will be booted out of power, and we'll get what we want. And David, I believe we will win, but we'll only win if we all, we've got to be utterly ruthless with people who are wrong uns, people that are based, and I don't mean that in a violent way, but politically, we've got to be utterly ruthless with people who are there for the wrong reasons, and we've got to find out who they are, and we've got to purge them from the system, because we can't have people. And I think Farage and Tice are included in that. They shouldn't be there. Farage, look, he can go do his broadcasting. He's a multimillionaire, no doubt. He can go and support Trump, do what he wants, but get out of British politics, because you're a hindrance now, Nigel. You're hindering the thing. Same with Tice. I want them gone. And then if reform can be reformed and saved, and I'm I'm a member of UKIP, and I'm working within the UKIP structures. If those two parties can be reformed and turned into some sort of joint, machine that will win an election, because we all kind of pretty much the reform UKIP, couple of other parties, not the crazy far right ones, we all agree on what we believe. We all pretty much know what we believe and why we believe it. And For Britain was again another party that I was gutted when that collapsed, because had we were all involved in that. David had some great policies. I loved Anne Marie. She's love to see her come back at some point. So we've got some very clever, talented people in our movement who are a lot cleverer than me. They're a lot more charismatic than I am, and they can actually get out there and start winning these elections. And changing it. But we're in the background, we've got to be there, David, pushing these agendas and making sure that what we believe is articulated properly and gets a political home. because at the minute it's all over the place. It's fragmented. Let's say I'm in UKIP. You might be. I don't know what if you're affiliated with any party at the minute, but
yeah.
No, but we need to find that, because the only solution is the ballot box in the end, unless you end up in an absolute disaster.
Oh no, you're right. You are right. You are right. But maybe this is a moment, as you say, and maybe to finish on it, we shouldn't be despondent.
No, I'm not.
That there's plenty of hope. There's plenty of things that can be done, and think Tommy Robinson and yourself and all the rest have done a great job in bringing people together. And maybe this is just the early days, actually. This is not the end. This is the beginning, maybe, of something that can grow, so that in 4 or 5 years' time, most importantly of all, we can take our country back. And that's what unites us all. Richard, obviously we could have talked all night.
Oh no, David. I mean, listen, it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it, David. I'm very humbled by what you said, and I really appreciate you asking me on. And you have to get you on my channel sometime, and
be happy to come on, as you say. I
don't know if you want to come on with Paul Thorpe, because I mean, you should get on with Paul, because Paul's a good guy to be. Because it'll be we'll get you on with Paul as well.
We'll do that. We'll do that. We're going to keep the ball rolling. We're not going to be cowed into meek submission. And I think when Tommy Robinson comes back out again with a fair wind, circumstances will have further moved in our direction. And that's
and listen, if Tommy was big before he went in prison, see when he comes out,
huge.
He's going to be, and I'm not a fan of Nelson Mandela, as I'm sure you're not. But let's get it right.
No,
Nelson Mandela went into prison a terrorist and came out a statesman, and that's true. Whether you agree with what he said when he came out, he was polished, and he came out a statesman. That's what I want to see with Tommy. Tommy's not a terrorist. Tommy is a journalist and a freedom fighter, and I want to see Tommy come out as a statesman when he comes out of prison. I believe if we can do that, that'd be really cool.
Absolutely, Richard. Well, listen, thank you very much. Thank you, all the people on the stream. You get masses of good wishes, Richard. It's incredible the love that's flowing your way on this. It's amazing. So thank you, everyone, on all the different platforms for watching us this evening. And as I say, those of you who find this enjoyable, who maybe haven't experienced me before, come back on Wednesday night, and we're going to talk about tyranny in the form of public health bills and how we stop that. Because actually, Richard, funnily enough, the lady that I've got on Wednesday, I don't know if you know her, Melissa Kumi, she's a really smart lady, but she organized, along with a couple of others, a very effective letter writing campaign, which helped derail a juggernaut that was coming our way here in forcing us to take vaccines and so on and so forth. So there's always things we can do, and there's always good people that we can bring together, and that's maybe a good note to end on. So look, that's it from us all tonight, folks. Thanks for being here.
Before you go, David, just your social media, because obviously this is streaming to 2 of my channels. Just shout out what your socials are so people can follow you that are watching this on my channel, so that you get that.
So if you're wanting to find me, folks, and get more of this content, then just check me out on davidvance.net. All the websites, everything's there. If you just type David Vance into Twitter, you'll get me. And those are the best places to probably get my stuff. I mean, there's a Substack as well, and which actually, funnily enough, this morning I wrote a Substack on Gary Lineker and Nick Knowles. So I also put stuff about Tommy out as well. So look, there's a big family of people, and we measure millions. And all we're going to do is get absolutely stronger together. So Richard, thanks for giving me your time tonight. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to speak with you, and I'm sure we'll speak soon. In the meantime, folks, that's it from Richard and myself from tonight. Good night.